When we talked about the students, he would always say this: we fought on education. And the one thing about Marion Barry is he wasn't afraid to tell you privately when he was wrong. Every time we disagreed and he thought I was right, he would tell me. Now, he would argue with you for about 15 minutes, and then he'd say, you might be right, which meant that you were right. So he would say this. He would say, it came to education, and he said, Kwame, and I have a lot of last 6 year stories of Marion Barry. He was at the house. We had dinner a couple weeks, about 3 or 4 months ago. And Marion said, one thing I could have done differently is education. So if you notice, his last passion was all about education. And we fought on the AP and the SAT, making sure kids take that, because if you don't take that, I don't know how you get into college if you don't actually take the SAT. So we had this whole discussion about that. And he said, so he came to the point was, all right, you write it up. So I kind of stopped talking to Marion, because every time he talked to Marion, he'd be like, okay, you do it. And then I started to realize he was used to that. You do it. Okay, you write it up. You got a good idea. You put it together. And then you get out there and you talk about it. And then Marion would say, you know, I gave Kwame Brown that idea. And I let him introduce it because, you know, he's a young guy and we got to look out for these young folks. And because I created the summer job program, that's why all these young folks love me. And so at first I just started to understand that was his way. That was his way of saying, I'm helping you. Even though, of course, he wanted the credit. And he knew that the only way that he could get the story in the paper is if he said it. And if you get the discussion is if he said it, and then everyone else would kind of follow it. So as I remember my good friend today, and we watched him come and go from the John A. Wilson building, I remember a conversation we had before I left office. I think Chuck Brown's funeral, we sat next to each other. And he said, Kwame, I said, Marion, you didn't create Chuck Brown, did you? And he said, I might have, you never know. And he said, you know, he said something, I think it was James Foreman's funeral, and he went to some other folks' funeral, and then Chuck Brown's funeral, and he started to say that he wanted to, you know, I need to continue to tell my own story. And that's when he talked about his book and the stuff he wanted to do. And at that point, he seemed to me, as we talked a lot, he was talking about, you know, what he wanted people to kind of remember him about. I said, okay, Marion. So as I close out about Marion and the youth, and I think about the people that he's touched, and Mike DeBonis, you can put this in the Washington Post, I think it'd be good since you're right, that you look at the movie Hunger Games, right? When you think about summer jobs, I look at Hunger Games and I see Jeffrey Wright. He's a graduate of the summer youth program with Marion Barry. Sometimes when I watch Fox 5 News, you know, I stopped watching it for a while because I didn't like what he was saying. But when I watch it now, I turn it on, you see Alice and Seymour, Marion Barry summer job person. There's 17,000 to 20,000 kids came out of the Marion Barry summer job program that are doing some phenomenal things in this country. And because of that, he lives on. So the last conversation I had with him in closing is I said, and Corlin knows, because I talk to Corlin all the time, I said, as young folks, we get tired. Y'all don't ever get tired, but we get tired, right? So I said, Marion, things are changing. We got, I'm fighting. And Marion looked at me, and he said, so, I said, how do we continue to make sure that the economic creating wealth for people that actually live here continues to move forward? Because it seemed like every time we push, he said, well, Kwame, I know exactly where you've been. I said, yeah, he said, you're at a crossroad. I said, well, no, I'm not at a crossroad. I want to continue to fight. I'm just not quite sure how. And you know what he said? I said, I think sometimes it seems impossible. And he said, gotta fight harder. Just gotta fight harder. And I would say, so I'd give another excuse, and he said, you gotta fight harder. Kwame, see, back then we fought hard. We were against everything. We just fought harder. So what you have to dig down and just fight harder. And that was the last thing I remember him saying, is just fight harder. God bless my friend.